This week, 2 different rounds of acquisitions happening in the enterprise security software space. Gartner's latest report on their latest acronym buzzword, CASB, and a whole bunch of other acronyms from Gartner. Fingerprinting bots and enhanced application and threat intelligence processor to accelerate detection and response time. That'll be covered as well. In addition to the benefits of log management and an engaging discussion on incident response in the enterprise, all that and more on this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production. Brought to you by IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. IT Pro TV offers 1,000 hours of up-to-date, high-quality video training content. Course topics include certified cloud security professional, ethical hacking, cryptography, and VMware. You can stream their courses live or on demand to your mobile device, all for one low monthly subscription price and cancel at any time. Visit itpro.tv/enterprise security to upgrade your brain with the most popular IT certifications. Use the code ES30 for a free 7-day trial and save 30% off for life. Logarithm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free, commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logarithm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Welcome everyone to this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is episode 22. We're reporting for November 10th, 2016. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, CEO of Offensive Countermeasures and founder and CEO here at Security Weekly, broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios on the lines via Skype. From the Black Hills in South Dakota is none other than the CTO of Offensive Countermeasures and founder of Black Hills Information Security, Mr. John Strand.
Thank you, Paul. And if you look around me, I finally got more interesting stuff.
Wow, you have a shelf with some stuff.
Well, I loaded random crap going on to make it look like I'm really elite hacksaw. I have webcasts running.
Oh, okay.
And I actually have one
graphs.
up there that says all of this is unnecessary. Yeah. So I'm feeling legit.
You are.
Today.
You're looking legit. That's very nice. Very nice. A couple of quick announcements. IT Pro TV has updated training classes for CompTIA, DNS Tech Skills, Networking with Server 2016, and Installation, Storage, and Compute with Windows Server 2016. I want to also encourage all of our listeners and viewers, please, go take our survey. SecurityWeekly.com/survey. That's right. We want to hear from you on your thoughts and what you think of us and the improvements that we can make, and a little bit about you that basically will make our lives easier as we continue this podcasting montage that we call Security Weekly. So please, securityweekly.com/survey. I was considering, John, of sending out a tweet that said 2 tweets, to be fair to everyone. Make security podcasting great again and fill out the Security Weekly 2016 even survey. And then I was going to do another tweet that said, we're stronger together with your feedback. Fill out the 2016 Security Weekly survey.
Did you do that, or did you think about doing that? You never
did. Thought about doing that, and looking at social media today, I basically backed away because it was inevitable that someone was going to be upset. But we don't talk about politics here on the shows. We talk about security. And we talk about enterprise security on this show, and our first story comes from OneLogin. Now, I've been analyzing this industry a little bit, John, and it's kind of interesting to see the players. OneLogin competes with Okta, Okta being the big player in this space, and I received some interesting feedback about some of the players in this space that maybe for the B-sides of the show we'll go into. But OneLogin is kind of a newer and nimble player in the space, and they've made an acquisition. And their acquisition is of the Sphere Secure Workplace. Essentially, what happens is you used to have to go to a web interface to log in from OneLogin on your phone. Now they've acquired a company that creates a virtual space that you log into that virtual space on your device, and everything happens within that virtual space. So when an employee leaves the company or loses their phone, you basically wipe out that virtual space for added security. So,
and that's actually, we talk about some innovative products out there. And I think,
right?
Isn't that cool? I mean, that idea seems like it solves so many problems. Well,
because people bring their own devices, right? So if I wipe out the container after they leave, everything else on their phone remains intact. It gives the employee access to work content in a more secure way than a single login. Formerly, OneLogin customers have to log into a web portal to gain access to applications under OneLogin's single sign-on umbrella. This acquisition allows employees to download a virtual container with all the applications from the web portal while remaining signed on to all of those apps with OneLogin.
Yeah, and this is, I think that this is finally cracking a door and a glimpse as far as what enterprise-level application and enterprise-level security is going to start looking like. I think, if you can actually get to the point where you can pull down a thin client of all the different apps that you need, and you basically make those connections, it's containerized, and then you start managing the containers and you make them get blown away, then that gives you versatility as far as what devices you actually run your apps on, gives you control and visibility even on devices that aren't even owned by your organization. So I don't know if this is exactly what the answer is going to be, but Paul, we've been talking about this on Regular Security Weekly for years now. Cloud, what does the cloud actually mean? What does it look like? And I think that this is starting to look like something that's going to resemble what it's really going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years. And you look at Docker, you look at Sphere, you look at what they're doing. I think that's where this is ultimately headed. Well,
also, I think, too, probably more organizations are going to get on the bandwagon of implementing two-factor authentication with a really good password policy with a single sign-on solution. So it's a little more difficult for the user to log in, but once they do, they have access to everything. They don't have to keep logging in. So I think that combination of security and usability, where you lose some usability because you're two-factor authentication, and you got a pretty good, it doesn't have to be the world's most ridiculous password policy, but there's some password policy and expiration. And then you combine that with a single sign-on feature, which means they don't have to do it as often, right? And I think that's cool.
And if you look at this play of what OneLogin's doing, it's like rather than trying to integrate with more and more and more services out there, they're basically kind of jumping ahead of the queue, basically doing this kind of containerized, Dockerized type application collection. Then you log in once, you gain access to all of your apps. You don't have to re-authenticate every single time. I'm watching, Paul, have you watched or seen any episodes of Halt and Catch Fire?
Yeah, I watched the first 2 seasons, I believe.
I'm finally in season 3, and there's a great point where they realize they have a competitor, and they're trying to get VC capital funding to do what this competitor is doing. And they have this quote. They say it's either $1.4 million to fight a war, or it's $250,000 to win it by buying out their competition. Right. And I think that this is what we're seeing as kind of a theme in today's episode, today's articles. Is there's a lot of purchasing of different companies, and you're seeing that kind of consolidation to kind of jump ahead of the competition and not fight, but basically leap them completely.
Now you got me wanting to get back to Halt and Catch Fire, dude.
Great show.
It is a great show. We should talk about that more on our startup security.
You should.
I want to give a shout out to my friend Brandon. He works for OneLogin. What's up, Brandon? He was the one telling me a little bit about the company, and then they happened to end up in the news this week with some acquisitions. More acquisitions. Synopsys has acquired both Cigital and Codiscope. And for those who don't know, Cigital, right, is more of like the consulting kind of training arm. Gary McGraw is a very famous person who works for Cigital. I think he still works there. I don't know if he's left, or I think he's still there. And Codiscope is like their security tools division. And they've been purchased by Synopsys. Now, it's interesting. Synopsys also bought Coverity, which does static and dynamic code analysis tools. And it seems that when Synopsys buys companies, they like to keep them separate and operating on their own. However, with all these kind of strategic acquisitions in software development and security, secure software, I could almost see them integrating some of these companies to come up with a full suite of training and all of these source code analysis tools and dynamic analysis tools, and to compete and be a bigger player in the market.
At the very least, there's got to be some cross-pollination. In order for these disparate products to actually work and function effectively, having security services feed the products is something that is absolutely essential to keep those products vibrant and moving forward. So if they keep them completely separate, I think it's going to be one of those things that's ultimately going to start to die on the vine. But if they can find a way to cross-pollinate these ideas from the products back into services and services back into products, I think it's going to be successful. So I hope that that's what they do, because that's going to be a really incredibly powerful portfolio of tools and the services if they're communicating with each other. But if they keep them in separate rooms, I don't think that there's any real big gains on purchasing a bunch of products unless you're going to start basically making them work and start to communicate with each other.
Yeah, I agree. The Big G has come out with their latest report on the CASB market. Get ready for your acronym
the hell?
So
Cloud.
CASB, it's cloud. Yeah, Cloud Access Security Brokers, such as Sky High Networks is the one that referenced this report, which obviously means they probably ranked pretty high in Gartner's opinion. And quite frankly, I've heard good things about Sky High Networks as a company. We've covered them on the show in the past. And the Gartner is quoted as saying, CASB, damn ads. CASB, I gotta adjust my ad blocking server. CASB has quickly become a compelling cloud security control platform for organizations of all sizes adopting cloud services. Now, they say that this is not a feature, it's an actual market, and that to be in this market, you have to provide visibility, compliance, data security, and threat protection all inside of a cross-platform cloud environment. I'm not sure they put the cross-platform in there, so I guess you could support just one cloud provider like Amazon, for example, and be considered for this market that Gartner has defined, along with distinctly differentiating it from IDaaS, WAFs, and SWGs. In case you want to play the acronym bingo here on Enterprise Security Weekly, I thought I'd throw a few out there to fill up your bingo cards on acronyms. Yes.
Good night. I still don't know what it does.
Yeah.
I might be approaching a point in my career where I can say I'm an expert in this field. But like going through all of this, it's just like, what does it do? I also like the Gartner prediction. It says Gartner predicts by 2020, 85% of enterprises will use a CASB. And all of those numbers and those percentages, I'm sure, were pulled right out of their asses. But this is one of those vendor bulletins that probably needs to be clarified a little bit better.
Well, and I think
what they do.
It's an interesting prediction. I'm not sure what they base that on, but if we look at the operating system market, right? Microsoft provides a lot of tools. However, people purchase third-party products to apply additional security to the Microsoft in the Windows operating system. It's very similar with the cloud providers. We've speculated before that, well, what if the cloud providers just give you visibility, compliance, data security, and threat protection? Is that enough, or do these other providers have to come into play? I think they do, as you're likely going to use more than one platform in the cloud to deliver the applications in your environment and tie those together. I mean, we've already seen very successful companies such as Cloud Passage and others in that space help you do that and manage security across the cloud. So, and also, your different SaaS offerings, not just cloud hosting, but your different SaaS offerings are essentially cloud as well. And I think that's where this more comes into play, is that you don't have a unified operating system anymore. You've got all these services being delivered in the cloud, yet you want to manage and secure them like you did when you were trying to manage and secure them on the endpoints. So you might have Office 365, you might have Salesforce and all these other applications, and how do you tie all of those together? So there's actually two spaces in cloud hosting and then another in SaaS.
Yep. And while I think the press release is horrible, I really do think we've been watching Sky High for a little while. Anybody that's actually tried to look at security event management or logging or security permissions or anything like protection for something like Google Drive, or they mentioned Salesforce. I've never really worked with that one, but Office 365 knows what an absolute unmitigated nightmare it is. It's just basically this creep of files and folders and access that's really not very granular. And honestly, if we go away from this horrible press release and we actually talk about that, this is a huge market eventually where you are going to have those services, and if you don't have that visibility, if you don't have that granular control, it's just a nightmare waiting to happen. It's something we ran into actually, I want to say Monday or Tuesday this week, where we needed to get good event logging out of Google Drive to actually identify what files were accessed by a specific account over what specific time frame. And it wasn't easy. It's just, this is an entire market that's built around the tool sets that these cloud providers have just being complete crap for any type of monitoring or any type of security whatsoever. And, it's a good niche market. And to be able to tie it underneath one dashboard like SkyHigh does is really, really good. So hopefully they can cut back the acronyms and the buzzspeak a little bit and more speak to what their products actually do.
Distill Networks has launched a high-def fingerprinting solution to tackle the problem of bots. Not a whole lot of technical detail. I had to kind of dig around to understand what this really was. Essentially, they had a study that said bots made up 46% of the traffic, and it uncovered this whole economy of basically scraping and just searching the web and collecting data through the usage of all these bots. Distill Networks is putting together a fingerprinting and identification that inspects the traffic and attempts to identify some of this bot behavior. So, that was
and they say it goes beyond intellectual property, but realistically, that would be the core business for this, right? So if you're a website that does news articles, if you're a website that does flight information, if you're a stock website, any of those different things, it becomes really, really easy for someone to create a bot that actually scrapes all of your content and then can rehost it someplace else.
Yep, and that's exactly what's happening.
And that's happening quite a bit. But I think what's interesting about this is fingerprinting them, and you have bots that you want to crawl your website, like Googlebot, MSN bot. But then you have bots that you don't want to have crawling your website. So the question is, Paul, how do you actually fingerprint and differentiate between the different bots? I think that that's an interesting technological problem. And if you're somebody that's serving up content, this is probably Distill Networks is probably something you want to look into.
And I also think that the EU regulations on PII come into play as well, because a lot of these bots are crawling the site, and Distill Networks as a product is looking at this, so your personal information is floating around out there. I think they said something like LinkedIn had a huge problem with these bots basically scraping LinkedIn, and LinkedIn was trying to shut them down, which is probably the target audience for this type of technology, are those big websites that are hosting a ton of data, and they're just getting scraped left and right.
Now, the question is, are the people at Distill better at this than the people that are creating the bots that are actually scraping it? And that's going to be an interesting tug of war to watch over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think that's like with any technology, right? It's a cat and mouse game. Same thing with the endpoint protection market too, right?
Yeah.
Zixia enhances application and threat intelligence processor to accelerate detection and response time to cyber attacks. Zixia, if you don't know, is a leading provider of network testing, visibility, and security solutions. Today announced enhancements to the company's application and threat intelligence processor, ATIP, which enables customers to rapidly extract security metadata, including indicators of compromise, or IOCs, and fast-track that information to reporting tools to speed mean time to identity, MTTI, and I should say, mean time to respond, MTTR, to security threats and malicious behavior.
Wow.
That is a mouthful. I like it when they create their own acronyms. Is that like a marketing? I guess that's a marketing tactic.
We only give them a hard time if there's a TM after it.
There was ATIP was a TM after ATIP, which is application and threat intelligence processor. There is a TM after.
Oh, there is a TM after that. Oh, wow, that's. Well, that's
it's a clear marketing play. I mean, you can't fault them for that either. Differentiating yourself in the crowded security market, really in any corner of the security market today, is difficult. I mean, try and think of an area of security where there really is only one vendor that offers a solution to that particular problem.
Yeah,
I almost like want to challenge our listeners to like, is there such a case? Because I haven't seen one. And as soon as I think I see one, I'm like, well, no, really, like those vendors kind of solve the same problem. I mean, they might solve it in a slightly different way, but yeah, it's a crowded space. So, and that's why we see a lot of this type of marketing is to try and differentiate themselves in the space.
Well, it is. I do think it's interesting, looking at what they actually pull. They pull indicators of compromised network connections, spanning URLs, URIs. They actually spelt that out. I thought that was interesting. Session initiation, and how do they, and they pretty much run on their own products, which is interesting too. So that should make them a little bit more effective at actually trying to detect these particular attacks because they're running their own appliances, not really hooking into other additional security appliances that are out there. Now, this is something we've been wondering for a long time. Is this actually a play that these companies can make? Because it becomes yet another appliance that you have to put in, another vendor that you have to put into your organization, or organizations up to actually doing that. I think that time will tell.
Yeah, Zixi is a publicly traded company, as referenced in the article, and they make all kinds of products that would take us too long to explain what they do. It expands outside of security as well, so it's kind of interesting.
Yep.
This article, the 3 major benefits of log management, John.
Oh, wow. Is this another? Okay.
This is actually from EIQ, right? Who is a security intelligence company. So they're going to be very favorable on the log side. And like I said, there's lots of corners of vendors in the various spaces in security. They're in the log camp, which is probably broken down into maybe 4 to 6 other sub-camps within log management and SIM and all threat intelligence. The list goes on, right? I mean, so they're big on logs. And they say that the benefits are it can track employees' actions, remedy problems, and connect all corners of an organization. And what I just leaves a bad taste in my mouth because I look at logs, and I know you do as well, John, very differently. And we pretty much talk about maybe the 3 things that are problematic when it comes to logs, and that is administrators turn them off, administrators configure them differently, and well, okay, so 4 things. When the system is under high load, logging is typically turned off, and trying to parse logs requires, is almost impossible to get out of it some of the things that you need to accomplish security because of the complexity in all of the different formats. Now, that's not to say people aren't making strides, and we talk about, big data and data analytics and threat analytics and machine learning and artificial intelligence are all being applied to logs, but I still think that there's issues with that. So.
Well, and this is one of those things where, I hate to jump on this article too much. So Kim Ann King, if you're interested in coming on the show, we'd love to talk to you some more. Because I'm about to say things not so nice about this article. Now, to be honest, a lot of these articles are very, very, very high level. What was that last one that we had? He had 400 words to get his point across. Yeah. The importance of policies. And we let him come on and kind of talk about it. And hopefully this isn't one of those situations where it's extremely limited as far as what you can write about this. But going back to kind of, just springboarding off of what Paul just said, all of these things are great, right? Track employees' actions, remedy problems, connect all corners of an organization and the visibility. And the problem is almost no one ever does this effectively, period. It just doesn't happen. It's too much data. And a lot of the vendors like to say that they're collecting all these logs, they can capture all these different types of attacks. But to be honest, there's so much data that's hitting the security analyst today that it becomes white noise. So yeah, tracking employee actions, how do you do that? And this article does not mention the way to do that effectively is through user behavioral analytics, right? Remedy problems. So how are we going to actually identify problems and remedy them if we don't actually have a firm understanding of what normal is in our network in the first place? And the best way to look at normal is how many event logs and specific event log IDs actually matter to you. If you have 100 event log IDs, just coming up with a nice round number, and you're only doing analysis and reporting on 10 of them, then there's 90% that you can get rid of. And you need to be able to make those types of decisions and not play the game of log everything and let EIQ networks sorted out for you. Connecting all corners of an organization, yeah, that gets into massive data aggregation into a centralized place, which also helps these vendors because many times their pricing model is based on the amount of data that's being logged. And once you start getting to the point where you're logging massive amounts of data, it becomes this kind of sawhorse where if you're collecting a tremendous amount of data, your ability to do analytics is diminished. If you're doing tremendous amount of analytics, the amount of data that you can effectively do those analytics and massive reports on is also going to be reduced. So it's that trade-off. And this article really could serve to kind of explain how these things can be done effectively rather than just kind of becoming magical unicorns. And that's really how this reads. It's like your event logs will catch everything and you'll be able to find all these attacks. Well, not necessarily true.
I agree. So it is like 3 magical unicorns that they're describing here. Mm-hmm. That's great. That's a good analysis. That's the kind of analysis you get on this show. Magical unicorns. Absolutely. And we have an episode title for this episode too, which is great. Magical unicorns. I don't think I had anything else on the stories for this week. I want to take a short break. Go ahead, John. Did you have something else?
I was going to say, it was kind of interesting. The marketing, like horrible marketing language that we usually see, it seems to be getting better.
Maybe they're listening to us. Maybe they're like, if we put horrible marketing language in there, Paul and John are going to call us out on it. So we better knock that off.
Yes. So maybe it's getting better.
Yeah, that's good. So we're going to take a short break, come back, and talk about incident response in the enterprise.